Now, one major issue that came out clearly is the spate of coups on the continent and the linkage to the level of poverty. Now, Nigeria has the most burden of poverty on the continent. And if this is happening, does it have any correlation to what is happening that we're seeing on the continent? Let's get some views now and some perspective from a very learned and very experienced person, Professor Khalifa Dukwa. He's the Dean of the Borno Elders Forum. He joins us live from our Borno studio in Maiduguri. Thank you so much, Prof, for talking to us tonight. The other day, we needed you to give your perspective on what is happening in Niger, and you were speaking about this and how far-reaching some of the consequences of the coup in Niger could be. Now, this has happened. Prof, give us an understanding. Are we...
Yes.
Could we see some stop, or kind of stop to these coups that is happening on the African continent? Or how can you describe the implication of the incessant coups that we're seeing?
Okay, thank you very much to everyone. Even at that time, I predicted that the coups in Francophone countries will never stop until the colonial power rescinds its own agreement of taking away their own resources, keeping them in French treasury by 85% or so, and giving them only 15% of their own money. Then if 15% is not enough, they'll go and borrow their own money to pay with interest. Meanwhile, the 85% of their own resources are being used in stock exchange, for instance. So what happened in Niger was also the same thing with all the countries colonized by France. The intervention of other European countries like United States of America, Britain, and Italy in particular, saying that we cannot, this death in the sea and so on will never stop until France stops doing the wrong thing. Because, listen, Gabon is a small country of 2.5 million. Small country, rich in oil and manganese, yet poverty is very, very deep. The people are there very poor, and that it is to them any coup now today, if Africans were good enough to step down based on the protests of civilians and so on, we wouldn't have had even military taking over, because the protests could have done the magic. But imagine personalizing the military, the police, and so on, sending them to kill protesters and so on. That was why the civilians themselves mostly invited the military to take over. Why the military? Because they are cohesive, they have a good leadership, they are disciplined, and that is why they are invited. Otherwise, they themselves know that this is not time for the military, and the military should just subdue.
Yeah, Prof, let me jump in quickly.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me jump in quickly.
Yes.
So if you look at what is happened in Gabon, there is a widespread protest in support of the coup scenario. In Nigeria, similar thing is happening. You see what happened in Chad and some Burkina Faso. There seems to be popularity on the street of this country in support of the military takeover. What is the implication of these scenarios?
Yes, the scenario is that there were coups within the system, be it within ECOWAS or Central Africa. For instance, France, as it were, decided to look the other way when the young man took over from his father, who was killed, Abba Kaka, General Kaka Debi. The same thing they saw. President of Cameroon, Paul Biya, had been there since 1982, as if there is nobody else who could take over, who could do better as a young man, despite his old age and ailing health, is still in charge with the child, his own child and wives and so on doing it. Again, they watch Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, changing the constitution to run for the third, which is a coup, a constitutional coup. The same thing happened happening actually now in Senegal, with Macky Sall trying to do it, but who couldn't do it because he was paranoid. And that locking up the opposition leader like Ousmane Sonko will eventually bring something terrible during the election that is coming in February next year, 2024. And therefore, in Mali, again, Mali and Guinea-Bissau were the only two countries who rejected the so-called independence given by France in 1960. Why? France never thought of leaving anything. They are still paying royalties for hospitals, roads, and so on, built by France at that time, before the independence and after independence. And France, with the law, the agreement, charter, that is absolutely, you cannot even think about it, that no former colonial country of France has the right to even train his own military or paramilitary in other countries than France. They have to go to France, buy equipment from France, do everything, but consent of France must be sought. And therefore, the difference between Commonwealth, the English-speaking Portuguese company and French is the difference. That is why it is not affecting the other English-speaking countries. It is mainly for French, and therefore it will continue. We said it in the past that it is a wind of change. They call it for liberation. The target is to remove that charter that kept them enslaved throughout, and they have the resources. They cannot benefit from it. And Niger, for instance, has had the uranium that gives France over 40% of uranium to make electricity in France, including Paris. But over 80% of people of Niger do not have electricity. This is the irony. That's why they said whether it is a military or civilian, they want to get rid, to say enough. They are saying, and the magic, or the magic is from the social media and liberal media and private media, not the mainstream media. And that Africans are able to talk to their own counterparts in Europe to tell them what they are doing, the foreign policies of their home countries in Africa. So they themselves, Europeans themselves and Americans, are also up fighting for Africa, that it is the best thing to do. And even any time I went there, let me learn. Anywhere I went there, I taught the students, this is what is happening in Africa by your own country. Anytime something changes, you are going to be humiliated as a country. And all these things will be, the cat will be out of the bag. Thanks. Yes.
Now, let's bring this conversation home. You've done a very fantastic job of giving us a very good background. You've given us what could be the implication, the scenarios playing out, the perspectives on how this is playing out on the continent. But let's bring it home. Mr. Falano, a lawyer, and who is warning that, look, political class in Nigeria should be warned about, they should learn a lesson from what is happening. And now you can see some president, Rwandan president, for example, had rejigged the military architecture in his country. Perhaps that is linked or indirectly linked to what has happened in Niger and Gabon. One may not know, but it could be. Now, in Nigeria, is there any lesson, considering the poverty level? You've just mentioned Gabon. Of less than 3 million people, they have oil. They are one of the highest oil-producing countries in the world, yet they are very poor. About 40% of poverty rate in that country. Is there any major lesson for the political class in Nigeria?
class and the political establishment itself that believes that it shall continue. No change is accepted in all these colonial power. The superiority mentality is the main problem of the developed countries. Particularly, the main ones are France, Britain, and America. And today, they are all competing for space in Africa, because Africa is the main hope, the direction of the entire world for the resources. The resources of the world are in Africa now, and it is time for Africa to not give them a blank check, whether it is China, Russia, America, Britain, and anyone. Never give them a blank check. We have to have our own. And when you talk of Africa, you cannot avoid Nigeria as a big country of 220 million, followed by Ethiopia. And it is not possible because all these countries around Nigeria are Anglophone, speaking French-speaking countries. And they have foreign troops there. What are they doing there? They are there because anytime any president, any leader disagrees with the French government over the sharing of the resources, even say by let us have 20 and you take 80, it is a coup. The Gabon one is also, they said, double-edged. Why? They said when Ali Bongo decided to bring his own kith and kin to be the head of the Republican soldiers, France was behind it. Why? Because Ali Bongo earlier said he was not comfortable with the continuation of the French policy, and he had also wanted to even join ECOWAS, and therefore we cannot continue. We said, look at countries like Kenya, Tanzania, and so on. Anytime they agree, they sign an agreement with China and other countries of the East, those things are done by the letter. They are executed, nothing, no game. Whereas our own, they say friends, allies, and so on, and hardly do it, and they keep asking us to take loan by force and with throat-cutting interest. And therefore, the deceit, the treachery, and so on is now for the West to now compete with the East to do it that way, because Africa has an alternative. And look at Nigeria, has the capital resources. Everywhere you go, you meet a Nigerian. There is no way we are still talking about education, we are still talking about water, electricity, and so on, if not for the presence of the foot soldiers there sabotaging the fixing of our refineries to have oil, PMFs for us. They are sabotaging electricity. All of them, you don't see them, but they are the ones behind it. Look at, just check the history of Ajaokuta, for goodness sake. Almost completed, but it was pulled down because of foreign interests. And therefore, time has come now for Africans to be dogged, to be brave enough to say enough of this, because they have to come together and say enough of this. 54 countries without a single voice at the United Nations Security Council. 54, as if they don't matter. And the resources are there. They create insurgencies. And with the Niger now, for instance, I said, why is it that Niger people are saying the ambassador should quit, should go away, and the French president is saying he's not going, he doesn't recognize the military? What are they hiding? We know that wherever the troops are, they are also looking at something. The spying is part of their thing. Why they cannot go away? Because the interests are there, and that the French people see that a country like Nigeria is an existential threat. Nigeria will lead other African countries to free themselves. That is why, from Biafra to date, France has never been a friend of Nigeria. Yes, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you are to say something to the political class tonight, lesson from Gabon, from Niger, from Chad, especially from Gabon, there are those who say poverty and the reaction of the people of that country. How can a country be so rich yet so poor? What would you be saying to Nigeria? And there are those who will say, if Nigeria is one of the poverty capital of the world, that's a very big lesson, isn't it? and that the rich are living and the leaders are living in so much of wealth and affluence and opulence, but yet the majority of the Nigerian populace are in abject poverty. A direct irony to the wealth of the country, but the poor, I mean the people of the country, are poor. Is that a big lesson? What would you be telling the political class? Do they have anything to learn from this?
Thank you. They should learn. Look at the quotation from the Bible, for instance. For those who have shall more be given. Those who don't have, even the little they have will be taken away and added to those who have. Ask the political class, ask them, all these policies, be it IMF or World Bank, if the policies have ever worked in Africa, anywhere they could just tell you IMF conditions and advice has worked in Africa. They cannot answer. Secondly, these subsidies, they are on the Nigerian jugular or African jugular to remove subsidy. Subsidies are supposed to be increased, not to remove, because they, Europeans, are subsidizing those basic by 80%. At least 80%. They subsidize fuel for their vehicles, cooking gas, they subsidize it, education, they subsidize. Don't take America, for example, because America is a different, something entirely. They subsidize it because they are running away from the situation where they will tell them, now to step down, we don't want, and then the parliament will do the needful. In our own case, the presidency, for instance, from independence to death, most of them, politicians tend to personalize the judiciary. They play double standard, getting the senior advocates of Nigeria to go and play semantic gymnastics in the courts, shamelessly. Ideally, a lawyer is supposed to help the court to finish the case. So I'm telling the political class that the game is over because technology has made it very easy now to trace whatever they are hiding anywhere, and that Europeans as citizens themselves are communicating with Africans, and therefore they cannot continue to do it because the Freedom of Information Act is there for them to give, and tomorrow may not be themselves. And therefore, I'm telling them that let them not laugh at the Francophone countries close to us, even English-speaking countries and Portuguese-speaking countries. The scenario is almost the same, only that the military and the police and so on in the British, the Commonwealth, they are more disciplined and they don't take things easily. But the French side, they have it too much and they cannot no longer take it. It is too much for them, poverty, hunger, and so on. And if the same hunger that is right now, our people are dying on a daily basis, if this continues, then people are likely to get to the street. And whatever happens, it is their own making. Yes, Shehu.
Yeah, Prof, we need to go, and just 30 seconds, Prof. I just like you to drop your final thought on the program. And I am a child of the military era. I was born during the military era, and I know how difficult things could be, and I've seen the civil rule in this country, and I know that what democracy could give us as a people. But again, the big question is, are we getting what we deserve as a people? There is a new president, Bola Tinubu. If there is one thing that you think he can do to get the trust of Nigerians with the level of poverty that is in the land, compounded with the pressure of coup d'etat that we see around the continent. In 30 seconds, what would that team be, Prof?
I will tell Mr. President Tinubu that he has a VP who is very well read. He knows those things are there. And that subsidy for fuel must be returned, in fact, added to it. And education also must be subsidized. This is the only way to reverse this thing. Whatever it is being dictated by friends abroad and so on, including the voodoo professors, voodoo economists, misleading our own people to do the wrong thing, let them tell you where it works. anywhere, whether they are doing the same thing in their home countries and so on. It is just the opposite. And therefore, don't take and swallow anything that is being dictated. Besides, I'm telling them that whatever politicians did in the past, the wrongs and so on, they shouldn't be intimidated. That happened in the past. They shouldn't be intimidated by their dossier, secret dossier, to tell them you either do this one or we are going to expose you, we are taking you to International Court of Justice, and so what? Let them face the issue of the people, and that they can bring in enough food for people to eat first. We have the resources to subsidize education, to subsidize plainly even anything that has to do with transportation, that is fuel, anything has to do with the cooking, that is what we call it, cooking oil, anything to do with health. We can subsidize health. The same thing would go for farming, for our own food security. And therefore, why is it that European countries are asking Africans not to produce enough food? As soon as President Buhari is out, they came back with the thing that, why is it that the case of Ukraine and Russia should bother us when we have the territory, we have the land mass, and we have enough rain to even do dry irrigation and so on to feed ourselves. It is not normal, and things are about to change, my dear politicians. And you said you are the child of a military. I was also part of the military, but I did not accept the fact that just to take instruction before you complain. I didn't like the situation where Oga will send me, the wife of Oga will send me to buy something from the chemist that has to do with my wives who will never do it. And secondly, my children, so many of my children were also in the military, including my biological ones and so on. So I support, I like the military, and I find it difficult to even swallow when somebody will just get out and denigrate our armed forces, our police, because of the fault of one or few people that are all over. Thank you, my dear Shaun.
Professor Dukwa, thank you so much indeed for your time tonight, and I appreciate the thoughts that you shared. Thank you so much. I know that you are multilingual. I was almost tempted to speak French to you this evening, but thank you so much, Professor Dukwa, for your time tonight. I appreciate it. The Dean of Borno Elders Forum, Professor Khalifa Dukwa, speaking with us from our Maiduguri studio.